Hello, people. Hope you're well. Welcome back to another combat catch up where we look at what's happening in the world of mixed martial arts. My name is Callum, and welcome to the Sanderson Show. Please show your love by liking and subscribing if you haven't already. Going to be speaking about a few things. Is Tsarukyan the biggest challenge to Makhachev's throne? Mike Perry is officially the king of violence, but what next for the BKFC champion? Jones and Aspinall exchange words. Is it just words, or is it going to come to fruition that they fight? Could Tate versus Home 2 happen at UFC 300, perhaps? And also, going to be speaking about Jalen Turner's amazing KO victory over Bobby King Green. So, I think no better place to start than the winner of the main event of the most previous fight night. He came up against Benil Dariush and he put on a clinic with an amazing KO victory. But before that, he had a little location with Bobby Green backstage. And look, I'll be honest, it was a bit reminiscent of when Khabib and his crew surrounded Artem Lobov. I'm not a fan of that sort of stuff. I think as two fighters, they should be able to just talk about it face to face by themselves. I don't think Tsarukyan needs to be bringing a crew with him and doing all that stuff. For me, it's a little pathetic. And then obviously Bobby Green being who he is, he's not going to let that slide. He's old school. And he came back with a couple of his friends and then caught some of Tsarukyan's friends and showed that he's just as gangster as anyone else. Tsarukyan, it seems like, has not, I'm not going to say taken on a persona because I don't think he's acting differently to who he is, but I think he's being way more vocal about who he is and he's willing to show the world who he is now. And it's going to go one of two ways. He's either going to become a fan favorite or he's going to be hated. But either way, we are here talking about him. It could potentially see the start of him becoming more of a big name in the division. And if he's more of a big name, then ultimately he's going to be someone who potentially makes more money for the organization and becomes someone that fans want to see fight, whether they want to see him win or lose. So it's going to be very interesting to see how things go with Tsarukyan. But that being said, he also commented on Bobby Green after his KO loss as well, which again I thought was a little distasteful. But if they don't like each other, he's not going to say nice things either. The question I have though is Tsarukyan Makhachev's biggest threat. Now we see Makhachev defend his belt twice after winning it from Oliveira, and we saw him beat Volk the first time in a result I didn't agree with. The second time was as conclusive as it gets, one of the best KOs of the year, and he's now booked again to fight Charles again, and then you'd presume the winner of that fight would fight Justin Gaethje. As much as I love Oliveira, as much as I love Gaethje, I think Makhachev beats both of those fighters. However, when you look at Tsarukyan, may not have the star power of those two, may not have the striking ability of those two, even though he stopped the fight with strikes, but he may stylistically be the worst matchup in the division for Islam Makhachev. And we've got proof. I can't sit here and say this lightning strikes twice, but we've got proof. The first time they fought, arguably Makhachev's hardest fight. And we saw Makhachev get put through the ringer. I scored the fight 2-1 in favor of Makhachev, but the rounds were really close, especially the first round. And Tsarukyan, as he said then, was only 22. He's 27 now. He's grown into his physique. He's got that man strength, or he's getting that man strength. But we also know Makhachev is pound for pound number one for a reason. The guy's a phenomenal fighter in all aspects of the game. But I do want to ask you guys, should Tsarukyan sit out and wait for Makhachev, or should he take one more fight? And if so, who should he take? I've got a little theory. We've seen him fight Gamrot to a close decision. Now, if I'm not mistaken, Gamrot's last fight was against Rafa Fiziev, and the fight got stopped early because Rafa got a bad knee injury. With Justin Gaethje being the next title opponent, I personally would matchmake Tsarukyan and Gamrot. I think you do that on the same card as Gaethje and Makhachev when they fight, or Gaethje and Oliveira and Makhachev, or you do it in between those fights. Either way, that's the fight for me you book. Then the winner of that is definitely the number one contender after Justin Gaethje. Justin Gaethje's already said he's not going to put that status of number one contender in BMF on the line, and I can't blame him. He said this is the last run at the title he's got. Why jeopardize that? And we can't even sit here as fans and go, but you got to do what's right for the fans. Like, if anyone has been a fan-friendly fighter since they started in the UFC, it's Justin Gaethje. So when it pertains to him, there's always exceptions to the rules. I'm good with Justin Gaethje sitting out waiting for his title shot. Like, he got a sensational KO win against Dustin Poirier. The guy fights everyone. Like, if anyone deserves it, it's him. So I wouldn't, if I'm Justin Gaethje, fight. But I think Tsarukyan and Gamrot makes sense. So that's my opinion. Would love to know you guys' thoughts. Let me help some of these comments. Shout out to GOAT since 1997. F Arsenal, man. Big up, Cal. I mean, they got the job done. They did. Boo Ryder says UFC just signed the Cuban Giant. Yes, they did. And he looks sensational. 4-0. 6'7", got the longest reach in UFC, the widest wingspan. And he's a quick, agile heavyweight. I remember seeing Stefan Struve and thinking about his height and reach. And then you look at Volkov, sorry. And you think they're long, they're tall, but they just don't have that agility like that. They're not very light on their feet. He looks light on his feet, and he's the Taekwondo world champion, if I'm not mistaken. So you know he's going to have that dexterity as well. He could be a real player in that division. Shout out to Hassan says, yeah, Rice. I wish we had signed him as well. Shout out to Mtar Mizzy. I'm staying fit as I can, bro. I'm still working out. Big up yourself for the inspiration. Shout out to Boo Ryder. Shout out to my my WWE character nemesis, the one and only Chris Back. Hope you and the family are well, bro. Keep it level. Big up yourself. Eagle MMA. Big up yourself. Marvel One. Big up yourself too. Cal, you seem much happier on a UFC compared to Liverpool. I just think the communities are a bit different. I think a lot of people look. I'm not even saying anyone has to like me. I think a lot of people don't necessarily like my takes, and I think they articulate that sometimes in a way which I'm not too keen on. Whereas in the UFC field, obviously this channel is not anywhere as big as Coppish, so naturally that might not happen, but it could happen in the future as well. Big up Chris, big up to John Conway as well. Hope you guys are all well. Let me get on to the next topic. Brutality is something that we hear and see a lot when it comes to combat sports, but when it comes to BKFC, brutality is taken to a whole nother level. And it's weird because superficially, BKFC looks way worse. But hitting someone with padded gloves is probably worse because you're damaging the brain way worse. However, Mike Perry was a semi-successful MMA fighter in UFC. Always loved by the fans for his personality as well as fighting style. But this feels like a perfect storm for him. I'm a fan of BKFC. I am. In fact, the only thing I'm not really a fan of is probably like the power slap stuff, because I just think that's you're going out there to take brain damage as opposed to trying to avoid it. Mike Perry looks so at home here in BKFC. Like, he's so at home. Big up yourself, Chris. Thank you very much, bro. He just looks so at home, and he took on Eddie Alvarez, who again is another warrior. And he said in the lead up to the fight, he's like, how do you get through this fight with me? You can't. You got beaten by a 45er, referring to Conor McGregor. He's been beaten by 55ers, and Mike Perry was a big 170-pounder. How'd you beat him? And he went out and he showed it. he beat up Eddie Alvarez pretty bad. He did. And Eddie is a warrior. Take nothing away from Eddie. Bad injuries. I think he got 2 orbital bone fractures in that fight. And it was his corner that pulled him out. The guy is a warrior. He'll go out on his shield every single time. But Mike Perry's a man that will put you on that shield. He is so brutal, but it suits him so much. And he as a person just looks so much happier in life. Now, granted, he's older. He's got a family now. Naturally, you calm down as you get older, or usually you do anyway, especially when you have a family as well. This just seems like home for him. And look, he can go and do misfits. He could probably go back to UFC and get double the money he was on before the UFC. But by all accounts, he's making great money at BKFC and he looks happy and he is dominating. He looks so good as a bare knuckle boxer. So he then called out Masvidal. And again, this is what I love about Mike Perry. We saw it when him and Conor came face to face. Respectful. He doesn't need to do trash talking. His fighting style talks for him. And a lot of people say he trash talks. I don't think he trash talks. I just think he says what's on his mind. I think there's a big difference. But he called out Masvidal. And when I first heard the call out, I was thinking, well, game bred boxing, Masvidal ain't going to take that fight. The more I think about it, though, and this is granted if Masvidal can get out of his UFC contract to do, which they probably won't allow him to. But Masvidal grew up. That was his thing. Street fighting was his thing. Backyard brawls, bare knuckle. Now, granted, he's way older now. And his body's been through a lot being an MMA fighter, especially in the last few years where he's been training for your likes of your Usmans and your Covingtons. But could that be a fight that Masvidal goes, yeah, I'll do this. This one last time I'll do this. Because I'll be honest, there's so many people who will be tuning into that fight. 2 OGs in the game, but 2 guys who throw down and will leave it all out there. I'd love to see that fight. Another person who's been spoken about here as well is Anthony Showtime Pettis. Not too long ago, beat Roy Jones Jr. in a boxing match. Again, I say this respectfully. I've never stepped in an octagon. I've seen times where Pettis hasn't necessarily gone out on his shield. Plus, Pettis has broken his hands a few times. This is not a good fight for Pettis. For me personally, it's not good. Like, I wouldn't, if I'm Pettis, I wouldn't take the fight. But at the same time, I'm not Pettis. I'm not a warrior. I'm not a guy who fights in a cage or in a boxing ring. So that being said, he's obviously going to make his own decision. But if I was advising him, I'd say, I don't think there's any need for you to do this. I don't think so. Win. I think it's a lose-lose situation for Pettis. But no, in fact, I take that back. That's a lie. He can win from this if he beats Mike Perry, because obviously Mike Perry's seen as the king of BKFC at the moment. The only thing, he's not going to compete in BKFC on a regular basis. Mike Perry will, and he does. I don't see the point in Pettis doing this. Plus, I don't think he beats Perry. I don't bare knuckle him. If this was a straight boxing match, I'd probably pick Anthony Pettis. But in bare knuckle, it's just different. It's a different sport. Everyone just sees punches being thrown and automatically thinks, the 2 are similar. They're not. Even just blocking punches, you have to move out of the way when it comes to bare knuckle. Blocking punches in boxing is cool because the size of the gloves, shoulder rolling and all that. You can't do that in bare knuckle. You shoulder roll in bare knuckle, it's still hitting you. It is still hitting you. We see that we saw that in the Jalen Turner fight with Bobby Green. The punch actually came off of Bobby Green's shoulder, but still connected with the head. So again, I ask you guys, who for Mike Perry? Pettis or Masvidal? I'd love to see him fight Masvidal. I think that could potentially be the moment BKFC becomes really, really mainstream. Like, they're doing a great, fantastic job now, but that could be the crossover moment. I just don't think Dana allows them to do that fight. Now on to the heavyweights. Johnny Bones Jones and Aspinall have been going back and forth. And this is fun, guys. This is fun. And do you know why it's fun? Because it means there's a conversation brewing. So I'm just going to share my screen with you guys. So if anyone is just watching this or wants to read it in their own time, I'm going to share with you what Johnny Bones Jones said. So, and this pertains to Aspinall saying that he should be stripped of the belt. Jones says, "I faced the absolute toughest competition this world has had to offer for 15 years now. During camp for a title defense, I sustained a major injury that required surgery for the first time in my career. Now I have newcomers requesting I get my championship stripped. 0 wins over legends, 0 title defenses, and already thinking you can call the shots to Dana. That's hilarious. In my 15-year career, I have seen so many guys who are supposed to be the next big thing. There's ever only been one John Jones. Never forget that," with the shush emoji. Right. I'm going to dissect this. Oh, just as I say John Jones, my brother pops up in the chat. Calvin, I want no trouble, man. I'm just going to dissect this for the people. I'm not even going to give my opinion now because I don't want that drama. But I'm going to dissect it. The first sentence where he says he's faced the best competition the world's had to offer for 15 years is absolutely spot on. I mean, if anyone wants to disagree with that, then respectfully, you don't know anything about mixed martial arts. However, a small rebuttal I have to that, he hasn't faced the toughest competition at heavyweight. Again, second sentence is correct. During camp, he got a sustained an injury, had to have surgery for. If I'm not mistaken, he did pull out of a fight with Anthony Rumble Johnson through injury, if I'm not mistaken, or is it Daniel Cormier? One of the two, he pulled out of a fight with one of those with a minor injury. I don't know if it required surgery or not, though. He's asked newcomer. This is the line I want to dissect. Now I have newcomers requesting I get my championship stripped. I don't think Aspinall is requesting the title to be stripped because it's John Jones. I think it's because of the situation, the length of the time of the injury, and the fact that they're still trying to do Stipe Jones when Stipe hasn't earned a title shot. I think that is the issue. Now, this is right again. 0 wins over legends, 0 title defenses, and already think you could call shots. That's right in the sense of Aspinall's new. He hasn't fought any legends yet, and he hasn't had any title defenses because he's just won an interim belt. I don't think he's trying to call the shots. I think he's looking for stability in the heavyweight division, but also consistency from Dana and from fighters. Jamal Hill, Yuri Prochazka, other fighters have had long-term injuries or whatever's happened, and they've relinquished the belt or the belt has been stripped from them. I don't think anyone's saying if you strip Jones of the belt, he doesn't get the first title shot when he's fit and ready to go. I think quite the opposite, and I think that's why there's a call for him to be stripped. In the next sentence, I think it's a little bit of a dig at Tom Aspinall, but again, I think that's just playful going back and forth. The last line is as cold as it gets. There's ever only been one John Jones. Sorry, never forget that. That's the coldest line you can end with, and he's right. He's right. The most talented MMA fighter of all time, in my opinion. Sensational. But I do also think Aspinall has a point as well. And true to form, Aspinall did respond in cheeky British humor and said, "You're right, John. Sorry, John." I like the way this is brewing personally, but I still think this is a UFC problem. I don't think this is Aspinall doing anything wrong. Heck, I don't think John Jones is doing anything wrong. I think this is on the powers that be at UFC, and they are forcing a narrative with this Stipe fight. If Stipe is going to get a title shot, Stipe should be fighting the interim title holder, or else they shouldn't have made the belt. They shouldn't have made it for an interim. It shouldn't have been made for an interim, or it should have been made for the full belt. Them making it for an interim, it still makes no sense. It's great for Tom Aspinall to have that belt and to walk around with it because, look, the performance was sensational. He's a sensational fighter. But as it pertains to the whole division and the outlook and the stability of the division, I think it's one of the worst calls from the UFC in a long time. I don't know what happens with this heavyweight division, but keeping Aspinall waiting for what could be 18 to 24 months is crazy, especially with the last victory he had and the stock he has at the moment. Giving Stipe a title shot against Jones for me is just pandering to Jones, and it for me kind of dumps on the rest of the heavyweight division when Stipe's last loss was a devastating KO loss to Francis Ngannou, and he hasn't fought since then. So why should you just get a title shot? What, because John Jones asked for it? Again, a bit weird. The whole thing to me just seems like a bit of a mess. The whole thing just seems like a bit of a mess. So yeah, it's weird. All right, so John 10, you're absolutely spot on with this comment, bro. Cal, Brock didn't get stripped when he was ill and missed a year. We had diverticulitis, if I'm not mistaken. Here's the thing, though, and this is where the consistency is not right. You're right, he didn't get stripped. But when he came back, his first title defense was against Shane Carwin, who was the interim title holder. And I think that's what the issue is, John 10. Not the fact that John Jones is out injured and keeping the belt. It's the fact that you've got an interim title holder who's not in line to get the next title shot. But then the interim title holder is expected to stay busy and defend the interim belt while the main belt's not being defended. And then when the main belt holder comes back, he's being defended against someone who, in my opinion, and the opinions of many, doesn't deserve a match for the title. Stipe is a legend. On paper, he's the best heavyweight of all time. Debatable, but on paper, he is. But that doesn't mean he should get the fight. He shouldn't. I think it's a travesty that he's getting the fight. But I'm liking how this John Jones and Aspinall rivalry is simmering. I don't think there's any disrespect on either side. I think both men have a massive admiration for each other. Aspinall definitely has expressed that. He's got a massive amount of respect and admiration for John Jones. I think Jones has the same for Aspinall as well. I think we'll see friendly banter. But ultimately, I want to see a payoff and I want to see the two fight. I do believe Aspinall is the only heavyweight that beats John Jones. And I also believe that John Jones is the only heavyweight that can beat Aspinall. That's the fight I want to see. Now, onto a fight that we may see for a second time at UFC 300 after it was called. And that is Miesha Cupcake Tate versus Holly Holm. Now, their first fight was a classic. Holly Holm was winning on scorecards. Miesha Tate takes her down in the dying minutes of the fifth and final round, secures a rear naked choke. Holly Holm goes out, goes to sleep, doesn't tap. There's that famous image of her throwing punches while she's being choked out. And Miesha Tate becomes the 135 women's champion, securing her legacy, achieving her dreams, and winning the belt. Now, since then, both have endured very different paths. Miesha Tate sort of stepped away from the fighting game after a bad loss to Amanda Nunes and a couple of other losses after that. Holly Holm's still been plugging away, had title shots since then, haven't won, but has still been picking up really good results and really good wins. Her last fight, though, she did get stopped. And I think this fight for UFC 300 would be perfect. Not only does it still have intrigue amongst new fans, in my opinion, I think the older fans, this is a fight that we're happy we'd be seeing. We never got to see a rematch of Ronda and Holm and all these other rematches. This is one that can be made. And after Miesha Tate's performance the other day, as dominant as it gets, she was brilliant. She looked as though she was back to the old Miesha Tate, just vicious. She was a savage in there. And if she can bring that Miesha Tate to fight Holly Holm, I think it becomes a very interesting, a very fun fight. So I'd love to see that. I really would love to see that. That is one of the fights I hope they make for UFC 300. I think that'd be really good and entertaining. And then finally, we speak about Jalen Turner versus Bobby Green. Bobby Green was meant to be fighting Dan Hooker, but Dan Hooker breaks his arm. Dan Hooker's last opponent steps in on short notice. Jalen Turner, for me, his biggest worry going into this fight was making weight, and he made weight. I love Bobby Green, massive Bobby Green fan. This fight was about as unfavorable as it could have been for him, though. And I think it showed in the way it happened, the knockout happened. One thing I also want to ask as well, we all sit here and we love and we laud people like Bobby Green and people like that who will fight several times a year. Kevin Holland's another one. Does there need to be a conversation that is had that you go, there's a fine tipping point where you go, stay active is good, but fighting too many times is of a detriment? If I'm not mistaken, in the last calendar years, that was Bobby's 5th fight or something like that. That is rough when you consider he's fighting top 15 guys effectively. That is really rough. And we've seen it with Kevin Holland. We saw a devastating loss for Bobby Green. And, you know, shout out and respect to Bobby Green, because he came out of a video after it, all class, all respect for Jalen Turner. And as a result, all class and all respect goes to Bobby Green. But this was a really bad matchup for him. You saw them when they were facing off, and you just like, how's Bobby gonna get his boxing off? Jalen Turner's just so rangy and he's so accurate and he's got such power. And the finish was excellent. But the referee, I mean, I didn't watch the fights live. I watched it the next day. I was watching the fight. My missus was sitting next to me, and I was just, I must have sounded like Dan Hardy to Herb Dean. I was just like, you can stop the fight now. You can stop the fight now. Ref, what are you doing? Stop the fight. No, it's over. Stop the fight. Why Bobby Green had to take that amount of damage, I'll never know. And also, for anyone saying Jalen Turner should have stopped, he shouldn't have stopped. You can't stop. You're not allowed to stop if you're going to win the fight. You just can't. You stop when the referee pulls you off. That's what a referee's in there for. And look, I'm not one for seeing people getting like losing jobs or anything like that. And by all accounts, this referee is a good referee. This isn't like a repeat offender like a Yamasaki or anyone. But there's got to be a conversation here that can't happen again. We're playing with people's lives and livelihoods here. Bobby Green took unnecessary brain trauma and potential facial injuries because the referee wasn't doing their job effectively. And it's a rough one, because look, some of us have got office jobs, etc., where we can make mistakes and you go, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I can rectify that. Referees, they're not in a position where they can make mistakes. And it's unfair, but it's also the role they've taken up. And I hope they get paid handsomely for it. But you just can't make those mistakes as a ref. And I don't know what the ref was looking for before the stoppage, because that to me was as clear as day that should have been a stoppage. But thankfully, Bobby Green seems to be all right. Hopefully there's no long-term damage there. And hopefully the referee goes back to being the very good referee he is and learns from this and doesn't make the same occurrence happen again. The question now becomes, who does Jalen Turner fight next? So I just want to bring up the rankings for you guys, because the UFC's lightweight division is a bit crazy at the moment. And I'm going to show you what I mean. So let me just share the screen with you guys so you can see what I'm looking at. Bear with me a moment. There we go. All right, you should see that. So we go to the lightweight division. Now, unofficially, Makhachev and Oliveira are fighting, so they're booked. But they're not technically. Gaethje's not booked. Poirier's not booked. Tsarukyan just had a fight, is not booked. Chandler's not booked. Waiting on Conor McGregor. Gamrot, not booked. Dariush just had a fight, not booked. Fiziev, not booked, injured. Hooker, injured, not booked. Jalen Turner just had a fight, not booked. Dos Anjos, not booked. Saint Denis had a fight recently, not booked. Moicano, not booked. Bobby Green recently had a fight, not booked. And Drew Dober, not booked. For the first time in as long as I can remember being a fan of MMA, not one fighter in the top 15 has a fight signed and scheduled. That's crazy. But that does make it fun at the same time. And the reason I say it makes it fun, let me zoom in. Sorry about that, guys. You probably can't see. The reason it makes it fun is because you look at this and the options. Now, Jalen Turner's just won. He can't fight Dan Hooker and Fiziev because they're both injured. I've already said I'd match Tsarukyan with Gamrot again for number 2. Poirier's looking for an opponent. Now, I know I said Benoit Saint-Denis last week, but you also guys know me when you watch Coppish. Jack Sparrow, Callum Sparrow, they call me. Jalen Turner versus Dustin Poirier, UFC 300. Who doesn't want to see that fight, people? Who doesn't want to see that fight? That makes all the sense in the world. And then if we're not going to do that fight, because let's say Dustin Poirier says, look, I'm not taking that risk. I'm ranked number 3. Why am I going to fight number 12 or number 10? How about you go Jalen Turner versus Saint-Denis? All I know is Tsarukyan has interrupted that 5. It was Dariush, Oliveira, Gaethje, Poirier, and Chandler. He's interrupted that now. So Poirier can't turn around effectively and go, well, I'm not fighting Tsarukyan. Look how low he's in the rankings. He's now 1 place below Poirier. And maybe Tsarukyan says, I'm not going to sit up. Maybe I'm not going to fight Gamrot either. Maybe I'll fight Poirier at 300. Because if I win that fight, I boost my profile and I've beaten someone higher ranked than me. So I move up in the rankings again. Maybe he does that. Either way, and again, selfishly, I say it because I love watching Dustin Poirier fight. I need to see Dustin Poirier fight. I think he's in a fight welterweight, but there's now options at 55. You've got Benoit Saint-Denis, you've got Tsarukyan, and you've now got Jalen Turner. So that's what I'm going to ask you guys before I sign off. Who, if you could matchmake, would you have Bobby, would you have Dustin Poirier fight? Would it be Jalen Turner? Would it be Arman Tsarukyan? Or would it be Benoit Saint-Denis? I'd love to know your thoughts. I'm going Jalen Turner. I think that's a very fun fight. But people, going to wrap up there. I know they haven't been on the show with me, but always have to give my props and respect and love to Luke, Tanner, and Jamie Phillips. Make sure you go and subscribe to their channels. The link to their channels is in the description of this video. I want to say thank you to you guys who have joined this show. Shout out to GOAT since 1997, Boo Rider, Hassan, Empire Mizzy, Chris Bracker, I know had to leave early, Keep It Level, Eagle MMA, Marvel One, John Conway, Daz Reynolds, John 10, Calvin. You guys are absolute legends. Thank you all so much. If you haven't already, please do smash the like button. Also, follow Sanderson Show and myself, Callum Sanderson, on Twitter and Instagram. Also, please do retweet when the shows go out as well. It'd be really helpful. And on the road to 2,000 subscribers. So hopefully get there soon. But it's been a pleasure as always, guys. Hopefully we'll be back next week. Hopefully with a full team. Today was on me. I gave short notice because I wasn't sure if I was still able to do this show or not, but was able to move a few things around in the end. So it was not on Jamie, it was not on Luke, it was down on me today because I had to book this one last minute. But people, thank you all for watching and listening. Until we see you next time, take care, everyone.